So this is a meeting of the Rules Committee of the Representative Town Meeting. And I will call the meeting to order. First item is approving the minutes of September the 13th. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Frank. We got Frank on that one. Corrections?
I'm sorry, Seth, I apologize. Frank on the motion or Frank on the second?
Frank is a second.
Who's the motion?
I saw Lois. Oh, if we don't, who have we got? The motion was made by whom?
Either me or
Lois.
Michael.
It was
Lois.
Michael. Michael made the motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So are there any additions or deletions or changes? Hearing none. We're ready to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Hands up. Hands, I guess, is the best way. Hi, Amy.
I'm not part of the rules.
I
so-
know, but now that I see you, I just wanted to say hi and welcome. Amy is also a guest here. Good. Any no's, please? I don't see any. Any abstentions? I don't see any. Motion carries. First and only item on the agenda is a motion to put the opt-out of the state required parking standards for multifamily housing, to put that on the table to be added to the RTM agenda. Can I have a motion to do that, please? Thank you. Great. And Teresa, and second, please.
Patty?
Lois, just because I saw her in the upper right-hand corner easily. Great. I might suggest that we lead off with Jeremy to talk on this, since this really is a Planning and Zoning Commission item. So Jeremy, why don't you start off and then we can dialogue after that.
Sure, thank you. In an email I sent out earlier today, I gave you a copy of a number of different documents. We'll start first by talking about Public Act 21-29, which basically were a number of substantive changes to Connecticut Statute 8-2. And 8-2 is the zoning enabling statute, which tells planning and zoning commissions and planners things they can do and things they cannot do, things you can regulate, things you can't regulate, how you can regulate them, etc. So what they did as part of the recent legislative session is they included a number of things in that enabling statute, telling commissions what you can regulate, what you can't regulate, and some new recent changes that the state's going to implement unless you opt out of them. There were two of those. One deals with multifamily parking, which we'll talk about tonight, and the other is accessory dwelling units, which we'll be talking about next year, because similar to the procedure we're talking about tonight and going to go through over the next month, there's a similar procedure for accessory dwelling units, but the way the law reads, we can push that off to next year and sort that out in 2022. So this is the way the legislature set this up is a little unusual, because what they've done is they've said, this is the law of the land throughout the entire state of Connecticut, unless you opt out of it. And that is highly unusual, but I guess in the name of affordable housing and some other topics, that they felt that this was the need, the way that they wanted to go, to strongly encourage communities to reduce their parking requirements for multifamily housing. And that multifamily housing might be market rate, if you think of, say, something like Kensett, or deed restricted affordable, if you think of something like the Heights at Darien or the Royal at Darien. So let's talk a little bit about the statute to start with, and what kind of procedural angles it puts together and requires both the Planning and Zoning Commission and the RTM to walk themselves through. So as I said, it establishes a standard throughout the entire state that a local community can opt out of. And the first step to that opt-out process is for the Planning and Zoning Commission to hold a public hearing, and that must be done. And then the commission must have a vote and state its reasons on the record. And the Planning and Zoning Commission must approve the opt-out by a 2/3 vote of the commission. So in Darien, with a 6-person Planning and Zoning Commission, they will need 4 out of 6 affirmative votes to opt out. If that occurs, they need to then publish notice of that and then bring it to the RTM. And as we discussed earlier, the RTM will have a meeting and a vote, and they too need a 2/3 vote for the town to affirmatively opt out of the parking requirements enunciated in this new statute. The statute just took effect October 1st, so a few days ago. So there was really nothing we can do prior to that date. We could not hold a hearing prior to then, but what we're trying to do is move this along in a timely manner. So the commission's public hearing will be Tuesday, October 5th at 7:30 p.m. with the details of how to access that hearing on the town website if you're interested.
Like 15 minutes before the voice. Here.
Is there a question? A hand so I can see you?
Not here.
No, okay.
Okay, I'll continue on. So what was-
Michael, I don't have a picture for you. Were you putting your hand up?
No, Seth, I have no questions.
Oh, okay.
I'll continue. That's a little bit about the statute and the procedural aspects which have to be gone through, if you will, to opt out of this. So what's this all about? The Planning and Zoning Commission has had a long time standard in their zoning regulations regarding multifamily parking. And that was 2.5 parking spaces per unit and 1.5 parking spaces for elderly units. And as the commission saw this legislation come through, they did put forth a proposal to reduce the parking requirements in the regulations. And they adopted those recently in July, and those took effect in September. And the commission reduced them from basically 2.5 spaces across the board to be 1 space for a studio apartment, 1.5 for a 1-bedroom unit, 2 spaces for a 2-bedroom unit, and 2.5 spaces for a unit of more than 2 bedrooms. And that's a little different than what the state statute is requiring or mandating. But the commission looked at it from this perspective. If you think of, you're all familiar with Darien and various streets in Darien. Not every street in Darien has parking on the street or overflow parking that if you're visiting someone in a building, you can just throw your car in the street for a little while. So the commission said, you know, for 1-bedroom units, having 1 space per unit probably isn't enough. Oftentimes a 1-bedroom unit might be, say, a husband and wife living together, or someone who might be living by themselves, but they have visitors. And for that limited amount of parking, they were not comfortable for 1 space per unit for 1-bedroom units. And similarly for larger units of 2+ bedrooms, in other words, 3 or more, they felt that 2.5 spaces would be more appropriate than 2 spaces. Again, to allow for some parking for visitors, for guests, for deliveries. We want to make sure that all this required parking, that there's room on site. And to use local streets as overflow, you can imagine in many neighborhoods, think of, say if you lived on Hoyt Street or you live on Tokenique Road, might be difficult to park in the street. There's not a lot of room. Boston Post Road doesn't have a lot of parking if you live on the Post Road. So you can imagine there's lots of streets where you'd want safe parking on site rather than using overflow, other nearby local roads and streets. So the commission said, you know what, we're willing to reduce our parking requirements, but not down to the level that the state is mandating at this time. Now, it could be in a few years, the commission evaluates the situation and maybe changes it again. But for the time being, the commission said, we've had a hearing, we're comfortable with these changes. We've adopted them. Let's go ahead with the opt-out and see how things shake out based upon these new parking regulations for apartments and condominiums that the commission has recently adopted. And that's where we are today. It's quite an interesting process that the state has put together. We have not heard of other communities at this point who have opted out. I'm sure there will likely be some, but again, it just took effect a few days ago, so I'm sure there's communities that are just starting the process. So I'm happy to answer any questions either about the legislation, the process, or the substantive issues of multifamily parking.
I would just point out that tonight, our role is simply to put a placeholder in the RTM meeting. And the reason for that is that it's a placeholder because you still have to have planning and zoning approve this. They're doing the public hearing tomorrow night, but then they have to vote to do this. So it's conceivable that they would vote
And get the 2/3 majority.
and get the 2/3 majority. And it's conceivable they would not, in which case we would just simply, at the present time, we just cancel the RTM meeting because there really would be nothing else on the agenda. Something else comes up, I would let the Rules Committee know, but right now this is it. So that's what we're doing here tonight, is simply putting it on the agenda, the RTM. It's not a vote in favor or against or taking a side on it. It's saying it should be voted, it should be considered by the RTM. Okay, I saw a hand. Frank, was that you? Yes, Frank?
Yes, I recognize that this is the last meeting of this RTM for this election process. Jeremy, is there a time frame within the new state regulations that the municipalities must take an action before there's a deadline or a door closes?
There is not, Frank, but I think one issue we have is, and I spoke to, there's a couple issues here. One is I spoke to Seth. One of the issues is the RTM usually doesn't take up business at the November or December meetings, and then it would be in January. So we'd have an unusual situation where the state law has taken effect. So now we're working under the state statute, which took effect October 1st. So people, developers and builders who are thinking of building projects potentially would start drawing up to that standard, when in reality, the commission is really pushing the other way in terms of using the standard that they've adopted. So what we didn't want to do is have developers and builders think we're going one way, when in reality, the commission's going the other way with a different standard. So the longer you keep something on the books, it really gives people some false hope of what the proper standard is. So we felt
it makes a lot of sense to do.
And out of curiosity, how many applications of this type does your office process in a year, and how many are open that you actually have on the table at this time?
Right now, we have an application pending to redevelop 3 Parklands Drive. It's an existing office building behind the assisted living facility, which you all see right behind the rest stop going northbound. That proposal is in our office. The public hearing will be October 19th. They did get in under the old guidelines, the Planning and Zoning Commission's guidelines. We've spoken to another gentleman who's working on an application to redevelop an apartment building or condo building, probably about 20 units. I spoke to him a few days ago. We expect to see that application in front of the commission, I would guess in January. So those are at least 2 I'm aware of in terms of what's going on. I know the Norotan Heights Shopping Center is coming back before the commission in October as well, or late October, I believe, with some changes to their plans. So again, it's a lot of people are in the pipeline. Certainly we have one that's sitting on my desk, one that I expect to see in 2 or 3 months. So We don't see a lot in Darien. Certainly, we're not Stanford, but we do see a smattering every now and then.
Well, it sounds like the logic of trying to
Okay,
get this in the-
Thank you.
Yeah, excuse me. Okay, Michael?
I was gonna say, it's the logic, it does seem logical to try to get this in the October agenda for the reasons that Seth described to Jeremy. And the question is though, if P and Z is gonna act this week, Seth, if the public hearing is, you said tomorrow, when will they take action? And then is there enough time for the RTM committees to meet and be prepared for the 18th meeting?
We expect
Well,
that
first of all, I think just Amy's committee will probably get the assignment here. Amy's been talking to Jeremy for how long, Amy? A while.
Yeah, Jeremy,
So
Jeremy and
I
I
think,
and Steve have been talking, and Jeremy was a guest at our last meeting to get the group grounded on the topic. And we have our committee meeting on Thursday, this Thursday.
right,
10
so,
So we've been following
Yeah.
the bouncing ball.
okay,
If I might-
Jack?
Yeah, the one thing that I'm hearing from Jeremy, and the one thing that I have a concern about is I think we need to do it in this October meeting. I'm just going to assume that Jeremy's going to have his commission go because they've also been dealing with this for some time. It's not something just popping up. Amy's been on board and her committee's been on board, so they're going to be able to report. My concern is that even if we move it to December, which we have done business in the past, the gap between October 1st and whenever we meet in December for the state of the town means that potentially anybody who comes in can claim that they're going to apply the old state, or we have to address that when they applied, hey, I did it under the new state mandate. And we want to eliminate that, move it as tight as possible. So if it's open for 18 days, because that's when we're meeting, okay, we'll take the risk on that. But everything else says, let's get it done on the 18th so P and Z can move on without any more agita potentially arising if we hold it off for 2 months or 3 months for that matter. This is just, we have to react. So
Thank
that's
you,
what I'm
Jack.
hearing. I'm more worried about the legal complications if we do not.
Yeah. I would simply say that throwing this on to the December meeting would not be a good idea. It's got a lot of aspects to it. There may be a lot of dialogue on it. And if there's a lot of room to be able to have dialogue because we do it in October, that's where we want to be. Let's see. Amy, yes.
I not being on the rules, I do have a procedural question. We believe that we need 2/3 vote of the RTM. Let's just play this movie forward. The commission gets their 2/3 vote. It does get on our agenda in October. And then we're required 2/3 vote of the legislative body, which would be what, 67 votes? Say we have like.
No, of those attending, Amy.
Of those.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, that was my question, because do you have two cracks at the apple if we don't have, like what do you take it off the agenda if you don't think you have enough members in attendance at the October meeting? Like to carry the vote, like is there an audible that you are potentially make if you don't think you have the bodies?
Well, as long as we have a quorum, then we have a vote. And it's 2/3 of those that are there. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's possible. I don't think so on this issue, but yeah, I talked to town council about it. And, yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question, and I'm not sure if this is the place, but Jeremy will answer it, or in the meeting. But if we don't opt out, in other words, we opt in, does that mean that any new regulations that come from the state are automatically applied to us, or do we get the opportunity to address each of them going forward?
Well, as I said, the two items in this statute, one is regarding parking for multifamily structures, and the other is on accessory dwelling units. And each of those votes will be separate and distinct and done at a different time. So while we expect the parking vote will occur in October of 2021, the statute gives us a whole year to sort out accessory dwelling units. So we've got a lot more work as a Planning and Zoning Commission to look at, review, examine, analyze, study. So that's so you can opt out of one portion, but not the other. You can opt out of both. There's no limits or restrictions on the local Planning and Zoning Commission or the community in general.
But going forward, I guess we really don't know, but I just wanted to bring it out. If they change the parking restrictions or requirements at the state level, does that become another issue that we get to opt out again or opt in again? Or is that too determined?
This is such an unusual thing. And, I'm not that old, but I've been around for 25 years here in Connecticut. And this is the first time I've ever seen anything like it, where the state's coming down with a mandate on zoning with a specific standard and towns can opt out of it. I've never seen anything like it. And they've done it for both parking and accessory dwelling units. Whether that becomes the norm in the future, I can't answer that. It is highly unusual. I would be very disappointed if it became the norm, where they're starting to take different zoning tools and aspects and saying to each of the 169 communities, why don't we just take the same standards for everybody? Very unusual. Hopefully we're not going in that direction. So I don't want to say what could happen in the future because this was so unusual.
Yeah,
that,
because this too is,
if they
because
continue
this
to go
too
in
is
this
an
direction,
Michael, one at a time, please.
if they
Okay,
continue to go in this direction, I think there'll be a lot of pushback from communities.
Okay, I see Frank and Michael, I heard you. I'll get you too.
Yep, I don't need anything, Seth. Go right ahead.
Okay. Frank?
Jeremy, I just want to clarify that the vote that we tentatively will take is simply to opt out and not to opt out at the specifics that you gave us in your memo of 2.5, 1.5, all that. So I see you nodding.
That's correct.
So I hear this as good news, that it's a binary choice. We're opt out or not. And then as the months develop, you and your committee can fine tune this so that if there's some people who feel that the requirements aren't high enough, that they'll have a chance to speak to that topic.
Okay, yeah.
Did I get a nod?
Jack, yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to put it in this regard, but it partially answers Lois's question. I always have concerns about letting the fox into the hen house. So there's no guarantee that if we don't opt out and the state chooses to change their requirements, that they're going to give us another opportunity to opt out. As soon as we do opt out, then we can have the planning and zoning make their determinations. And if they so choose to follow something that the state is doing, however they want to, then that's the planning and zoning board's choice. So I do agree that this is either an up or down. And again, what they might do in the future, I have more concerns about if we don't opt out, as opposed to, waiting and saying, oh, they gave us this opportunity now, we might expect in the future. You just don't know. But as soon as we opt in, the fact is they can change whatever they want and we're beholden to what their changes are. And that's how we have to take it.
Yeah.
So,
Michael?
Yeah, I'm new to rules, guys. So if what I'm about to say is inappropriate, please, say so. But it seems to me that what we're debating is something that is a P&Z issue right now. That what I understand our job is tonight is to leave room on the agenda for this, and that's what we have to decide. But the debate I'm hearing about what we should be doing is the P&Z issue that will then potentially come to us as an RTM, not as a rules committee. And that will really depend on what happens, A, at the public hearing tomorrow, and then B, with P&Z's vote. So it seems to me, again, push back on me if I'm wrong here, but it seems to me that we're debating something that's not really ready to be debated. and not the rules.
Well, Michael, I've allowed latitude here because
Okay.
we have the Director of Planning and Zoning, and we're fairly, most of us on this committee have been around a while, and I think discussion in detail doesn't hurt. It gets the word out. Anybody watching this perhaps hears their questions
Okay, that's helpful.
answered. And this is as we said right from the beginning, it's a placeholder. But I think before you even vote for that, you want to flesh out what some of the issues are. Amy.
That's help. Just gonna say that's helpful information for me, Seth. I was sticking a little probably too close to the rules, and I wasn't thinking about it from that perspective. So thank you.
No problem. Amy.
I just have a procedural question. When I look at the wording in the act, it says that you have the ability to opt out, public hearing. So we had to wait for October 1st for the regs to be in effect. We hold the public hearing, which is tomorrow, the 5th. P&Z votes. Number one, do they plan to vote at the end of the public hearing tomorrow? Because then their decision has to be recorded in a widely circulated publication no later than 15 days. It doesn't say recorded and then held open for a period of time. It just says thereafter, the municipality's legislative body, then meaning the RTM, it goes ahead and votes. Is there sequentially, do we have enough time to be meeting all of these hurdles before the 18th RTM meeting?
Amy, it's a good question. And we did look at that in the office. We spoke to Wayne Fox a little bit about it today. So what's likely to happen, we'll have the hearing on the 5th. The commission will likely vote on the 12th and elaborate their reasons on Tuesday, October 12th. As most of you know, the commission puts in a ton of time and they meet almost every week. And Kara Gately and others can attest to the fact that it's a very heavy workload and they're meeting regularly. So they're going to meet on the 12th. If they get a vote on the 12th, that will be published in the Stamford Advocate on the 14th or 15th of October. And we will get whatever decision comes out on the 12th. I will get it out to Seth and Krista on the 13th so that whatever committees this is assigned to, as well as the full RTM, should have all those materials ready to go out in the mail either Wednesday afternoon or Thursday.
Okay, so there's no requirement.
I'll get you, Jack.
There's no requirement that after that's in the Stamford Advocate, that you have to wait a certain amount of time for the public to, hear it, ruminate on it, et cetera. That was the hearing part. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
so in certain ways, I agree with what Michael raised. And while it's good to have a discussion, I would like to move that we assign PZ&H as the sole committee on this and make that motion. And, see if we can't get a second and vote on that.
Do we have a second on
I'll make a
Jack's
second.
motion?
You have
Patty's been dying. Here you go, Patty. You got the
all right. There you go.
Okay, so we now have that. We now have that assigned.
Well, no, we have a motion that's been seconded.
Okay.
So we got any questions? Okay, ready to vote? Let's go ahead and vote. Those in favor, please.
Aye.
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 Okay, and opposed? I don't see any. Abstentions? I don't see any. So we've got the item moved and discussed. We've got the PZ&H committee assigned as the sole committee. Can I have a motion then to put this on the agenda? The item and also the assignment on the agenda for October 18. Can I have a motion?
Excuse me, Seth.
Frank, I got Frank and I got a second from.
Hang on 1 second, Seth. Hang on 1 second. We had a motion earlier. We had a motion earlier, which I understood was to
That was
put
Jack's
this item.
motion
That
already.
was to assign it to PZ and H.
Nope, that was like 2
Oh,
minutes ago.
yeah.
I got that one, but
Well,
earlier.
we amended it really to add the assignment, that's all.
The motion we had right before Jeremy spoke.
Yeah, was to discuss the state of the required parking standards, to discuss the issue.
So we had a motion and a second. We didn't vote on that. I had
Well,
it open.
we amended it to assign a committee to the thing, and then we voted both at once.
Okay, so Jack's motion was to amend that to be an assignment of PZ and H to primary. on the
Correct.
side. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I realize that's a little scribbly, but if you'll permit me.
Actually,
I don't do scribbly, Seth. Okay, we got it.
Well, I understood that Mark walked away for a little bit, so I was holding off on my motion until he got back.
There we go.
So Seth,
Okay.
I have a question. So if we're done with that, right? Because we've just voted.
So now I want to vote to put the whole thing on the agenda,
Okay.
right? And which I think we had a motion and a second to do that.
Yep.
So I think are we ready to vote on that? Do we have the motion and the second, Mark?
Yes, we do.
Put
We
it,
have
to put it on the agenda
motion by
with the
Mr.
assignment.
Davis, the second by Ms. Baumgarten.
Okay, great. So ready to vote? Those in favor to put the item on the agenda? Great.
Aye.
Thank you. Noes, please. I don't see any. Abstentions? I don't see any. Motion carries. Great. Other business?
Seth, Amy
Wait,
wants to
Amy's,
speak.
Amy?
Yeah, I have one procedural question.
That'll teach you to show up to a meeting, Amy.
I have my committee meeting scheduled for the 7th. It would be stronger for us to move it to after the planning and commission votes on the 12th. So I should push my meeting to after I make sure planning and zoning commission has voted to approve the opt-in and opt-out before my committee reports on it, correct?
I
Right.
will give you another option. There are several
Okay.
times where education and F&B has voted on things in contemplation of a vote being performed by the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Ed, or the Board of Finance. And so we vote in contemplation contingent upon that passage. So unless you feel that there's additional information, you can keep your Thursday meeting. You can vote that based upon, I'm assuming Jeremy would probably be there anyway, that based upon the, in contemplation that the P and Z achieves their 2/3 vote, we are taking action. If they don't, then you don't have a report anyway. So
Okay.
it goes by the wayside.
Yeah.
So you don't
The
have
only-
to move your meeting.
Amy.
The only
if you're-
counter to that, I would say,
Yes,
Amy,
Pat?
the only counter to that, I would say, would be, and again, it doesn't matter to me, it's your committee, is that there is a public hearing. So I don't know how often, Jack, I love, when you can convene your meetings like that, but I don't know how often you're doing that when there's a public meeting a few days before. So that's just something to consider.
The only thing that I would,
It's as long as the
Yeah,
public
I-
hearing is, wait, as long as the public hearing is before, and knowing how much PZ&H will be listening or attending or whatever that public hearing, so they will be aware of what is being said, I wouldn't worry about it. We do the same when the Board of Ed, Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen have their public hearings.
Okay.
Seth, I have a question for Amy.
yeah, Michael.
Thank you. Amy, I'm on your committee, as you know. I have not seen a warning or an agenda for a meeting on the 7th. So have I missed it? Because I've received nothing and I just double checked.
You have not received it yet. It's a regular meeting, so you will get, I'm waiting for the assignment today to release
Okay.
it.
Amy, one of the great thrills of being chair of a committee is that you get to make the decisions. So I will leave you with that thought. You get to weigh the vast debate and make a decision about what you would like to do with your committee. Are there any other things?
Just that we mentioned before, and I know Amy has mentioned it, I think it's incumbent upon all of us, including contacting the district chairs, that as there is only one thing on this agenda, and it is the last legislative meeting, the meeting of the legislative year, and several people may have opted out, not to steal the term, of continuing on the RTM. I think it's incumbent on all of us to stress that we do need people here because it's important that we achieve a 2/3 vote. And if we get that message out, we should be able to not just worry about achieving the 2/3 of the meeting, but I feel confident that we can come up with 68 votes at least. So nobody can question. So
There
that's
we
the
are,
other
recruiters.
That
You
would be
have your
ideal.
marching orders. Are there any further items? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Frank has his hand up.
Oh, you beat me to it, Frank. Okay.
Seth, I would urge the committee as well as Jeremy and whoever gets Wayne to form up the resolution to emphasize that this is simply opting out. And as you could tell from the gist of my earlier question, so as to tamp down any confusion as to whether this includes the detailed recommendations that Jeremy's committee has prepared for us, so that I'm afraid that the RTM meeting could nibble away at the details of this. And so the statement, when it does come out, is clearly it's local control.
Yeah,
And
I think
frame
Frank
it in
makes a good
terms of
point.
local control and be done with it. But thank you.
All
I
right,
think
great.
Frank,
Thank you,
Seth, I think
Frank.
Frank makes a really good point with that we need, the direction needs to be really simple because it could become kind of unwieldy when the ask is actually fairly simple and straightforward.
Got it. And I'm in conversation regularly, as you can imagine, with town council, and so is Amy. So between the two of us, we will get the message out. Great.
Seth, I have one other question.
Patty.
At the last RTM meeting, you mentioned that you were going to have David Knopf give updates continuously. Did you feel like we should consider having him on it, or he can do it, a few months from now?
I think that
Doesn't
he
matter
can
to
do that
me.
later because I think he brought us up. I think he did a pretty thorough job. I don't see any need to repeat it on that short of time.
Okay, great.
Okay. Other business?
Are we
Hearing none,
adjourned?
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
There we go. A second, please.
Second.
There we go. All in favor?
Aye.
Have a
Thanks.
great evening, everybody.
Thanks, Seth. Thanks,
Aye.
Mike.
Thanks,
Thanks for
Jeremy.
sorting
Thank
it
you.
out.